It is 10:30. In a moment, up to the roof of a church with a pastor and his wife in a bed. And I'm not kidding. Right now.
We're here at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, and yes, we are on
Once again, welcome to the Sexperiment.com. I want to welcome all of our audience, of course, those of you that are here in the U.S. Okay, and internationally as well.
After Fellowship Church, and he's in a bed with his wife on top of his church right now. He's going to stay there for 24 hours to promote the 7-day Sexperiment.
What is it all about?
Well, Lisa and I have written a book based off of a challenge that I did several years ago. I just basically suggested to the church for all married couples to have sex for 7 days. And it was so popular, we received so much attention that we thought, hey, let's write a book about the results of it. So it challenges married couples to understand the depth and the beauty of sex, because it's not that we don't think about sex, we don't think deeply enough about it. And most married couples want to have more sex, but they're not having enough sex, and we talk about how to do it in the book.
And Lisa, you guys believe that the church has taken God out of the bedroom.
That's right. For far too long, the church has been strangely silent about something that God was not silent about at all. In fact, He created sex. So we believe that the first and foremost place to talk about sex is in the home. And then the second best place would be the church. And so I've gotten emails or Facebook messages myself from parents who are saying, is it okay for my kid to be here, for my child? You know, what's the appropriate age? And what we found is that children and adults too are being bombarded with sexual messages through media, through television, through music. And so why not give the pure and clear view of what God says about sex right here at the church? So I guess today we're shouting it from the rooftop.
Yeah. Our message is to shout it from the rooftops that God is pro-sex. I think for too long a time we've allowed the culture to sort of hijack sex. And I think it's time for us to look at God's opinion about it, because God says He's for sex. Sex is not X-rated, it's God's created. And He wants us to practice sex within the confines, within the safety net of marriage. That's the statement that we're making.
Okay, but you're not saying just for married couples to have sex. You're saying for them to have sex 7 days in a row.
7 days in a row. And when we announced it, the guys gave us a standing ovation.
Right, I can imagine so.
But you have to know that one of the things that we talk about in our book, The Sexperiment, is that it's not just about 7 days of sex. There's many couples who are dealing with some very hard issues and pain and suffering, maybe from their past, abuse, whatever, and we encourage them not to just get in bed and have sex, but to start with dialogue. Read through the book, look at what the Bible has to say about the marriage and intimacy. Then perhaps after walking into a counselor's office or talking to a trusted friend, that you can embark on this. But perhaps there needs to take some healing that needs to take place first.
Now, what happens in the bedroom? How is that supposed to affect what happens out of the bedroom?
Well, what happens inside the bedroom definitely affects what happens outside. When couples get married so often, I think we resign from our number one role, that of being a spouse. It's easy to start chasing careers, kids, whatever. Also throw in the NASCAR pace of life. Also throw in some other extracurricular activities. You have a hard time really building in time and carving time out for one another. So this book is all about creativity. It's all about romance. It's all about rekindling that it factor that you had before the marriage altar, because what you do before the marriage altar affects what you do after the marriage altar. So try doing what you did before, even after, and I believe it'll take your relationship to a whole nother level.
Okay, so we're looking at, let me go through.
We have some of the worst.
Well, I know, our wedding photos are not the best. Oh yeah, this is a great one. The one that shows the altar, all of the bridesmaids, and then we're kind of peering in like angels looking over at the wedding. I don't know, if you got married in the 80s, you probably have a shot like that. That was the popular shot.
Right now, Ed Young is doing something very odd. He joins us on the phone now to tell us what that is. Pastor Ed, thanks for coming on the ticket.
Good morning to you, man.
Oh, God. He's doing things, Jerry.
Oh, no.
No. Listen, man, you guys have the greatest show I think I've ever heard. You guys are awesome.
How is your congregation responding to this? Do you fight some members who think this is not the right way to do it, or are they mostly on board?
You know, most of the people are on board. You know, when we gave the sex challenge, the guy stood up and gave us a standing ovation. but then after about 3 or 4 days, you know, the texts and the emails we received were from women. They were saying, man, the romance level has gone to another level. God's the one that thought it up. He's pro-sex. Sex begins in heaven. And I think when we understand that and get God's opinion on it, I mean, you're talking about a hot opinion, God's got it on sex, then I think we can discover, you know, what relationships are all about. But I'm excited about churches, you know, talking about the raw and the real. Lisa and I don't have the perfect marriage, and we talk about that, and I speak about that often. We've gone through struggles like anyone else. But I think when you do it His way, you can negotiate through those difficult times, and when especially you understand what sex is all about, and when you understand the beauty of it, then I think greatness will happen.
And lastly, this is not just to put the focus on couples. It is also to remind them that they have to have these conversations about sex with their kids, isn't it?
Oh,
Yes, no
We don't do
question
that.
about that.
Sex education begins when you bring that baby home from the hospital, because the environment is created for
Yes.
them to learn about sex before a lesson is ever taught or spoken. So you're creating an environment for them to learn. And who better to teach the children about sex than the mom and the dad? The first place to have that talk is in the home. The second place is the church.
Right here.
Because God invented it. We should be bold and audacious in talking about it among each other as spouses, but also with our children, because we want our kids to have that great legacy, a wonderful marriage that they can have and enjoy forever.
Listen, we cannot tell y'all how grateful we are to y'all for doing this, but really and truly, this is just a continuation of what y'all have been doing for 20 plus years there at Fellowship Church. And love. I think every pastor ought to get behind the bed in, because it's an opportunity to cast a vision for what can be. And you all do such a great job. You know, it's easy in Twitterverse, all that kind of stuff, to take pot shots at this, that, and this other thing. But y'all do such a great job of keeping it on a high plane and saying, this is what we are for. This is what we're in favor of, and this is what God is calling us to. And we literally will never be able to repay y'all for everything that you've done for us personally. And it's a blast to get to share this with y'all.
Okay,
Well, we
and
love
I wanna
you.
say, every parent ought to get behind the bed in and
Somebody.
be in church for the services, because we said those are awkward conversations.
That's right.
Then bring them in church and let Ed talk about it. Let Lisa talk about it.
We're going to
If
talk
you-
about it in this series.
You know what, Julie? We're actually, later on this afternoon, we'll have all the kids here.
Uh-oh.
I think it's at 2:55. All the kids are going to come and talk about how Ed and I told them about sex.
Ooh.
We will definitely be tuning in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be comedy hour.
For sure.
Well, part of that to me is talking about sexuality
Yes.
in a way that just is an ongoing conversation. Now, I'm going to tell that are listening, there is no way it's not going to be awkward.
Yeah, you're right.
You're right.
It's awkward.
That's right.
But you need to face the awkwardness, kind of fight through it,
That's right.
and have that conversation, and then create an open dialogue so that hopefully your kids can come back.
Yeah.
And you know, part of what I love about what you guys are doing, well, it's obvious that you love each other.
Yes.
And you know, the fact that I just think some couples are like afraid to be romantic or kiss in front of the kids or
that's good.
snuggle, and I just think you need to.
Yeah.
Because you need to model that for your children so that they can see what healthy
Exactly.
intimacy looks like.
You know what, Mark? Somebody told us once, and I can't remember who. I'd love to give credit to the source, but that the way you tell your children about sex, or how old, somebody will say, well, how old should your kids be when you talk to them about sex? It starts from the time that they're born. I mean, Ed says, and we've all heard that sex was the first word ever mentioned about any person. It's a boy or it's a girl. But from that moment on, they're taking their cues from mom and dad and how it works and how it operates, and about the love relationship, the reconciliation, all of that. So sexual education is from the beginning. You know, it's a long, long process, but that climate creates, I think it helps with that awkward talk, you know, if you have the right climate leading up to the talk.
I was gonna say, teenagers out there, I know you think, oh gosh, this is a sex book, oh my goodness, I can't read this, but hey, listen, let's change the world in our generation.
That's right.
Saving yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's worth it, and don't listen to culture, bring the bed back into church.
Woo!
God back in the bed.
That's right.
Oh, wow, thank you, young children, woohoo!
Tell me, how do you talk to students about this very topic? Because you're a sought-after speaker, and especially I know the young people are drawn to you. Give us some stuff that you use when you talk to them about this subject.
Proverbs 29:18 is probably my favorite verse to use, because you would never think of it as a sex verse, but it says, where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I put in the comments that I wrote about the book, that you guys were kind enough to let me write some words about it, is that usually we approach sex and sexuality from a restrictive standpoint. And so we try to impose restraint. But the scripture says that where there's no vision, the people throw off the restraint. So you can put on all the restraint that you want, put on all the rules and all the boundaries that you want, and scare people with tactics all you want. But if there's no vision, if there's no preferable future that they're driving toward, then the restraint will be cast off when temptation gets high. You know what I'm saying?
So good.
That's excellent.
So
good.
trying to create, like you guys have, a vision for what God intended sexuality to be, what he intended marriage to be, and then the restraint will come as a byproduct of the vision that you have. So I think if you get a teenager, or really anyone who whether they're married and trying to stay sexually pure in marriage, or whatever the case is, if they have a vision that's so hot and so pure, so focused and so worthwhile, then they would never forfeit that vision of what God's put in front of them on the altar of temporary pleasure and satisfaction.
Yes.
And so I think that's what you guys are trying to do right now, which is get the vision out in front of people, rather than a book about the evils of sex, to say this is the way God intended it to be.
Yes.
And paint that picture so beautifully that the restraint will be a byproduct of the vision.
Boy, that's a great word.
Brilliant. Now, Carl and Laura need no introduction, but they're two of the most dynamic leaders in the world today. They pastor Hillsong, New York, Hillsong NYC.
And Carl and Laura have been leading young adults and singles and just making an impact.
Now, Laura, how long have you guys been married?
8 years.
Wow.
And you have Ava, Charlie,
and Roman.
Okay, gotcha.
You know what? That is intense, man. And it's intense in a great way, but also too, there are challenges, you know. And one of the reasons, Carl and Laura, that we wrote the book, The Sexperiment, were those challenges that Lisa and I faced, and still face, but we faced especially when the kids were young, because the best sermon I've ever had preached to me about marriage was from our pediatrician, believe it or not. I might have told you this story before, but basically Lisa took the twins, and I went with her during their 2-month baby appointment, and the pediatrician asked me, hey, have you dated Lisa lately? Have you taken her out on a date? And I'm thinking like, wait a minute, that's what I did to get her back in the day. She was like, no. Have you dated her? And I was like, boom, totally convicted. I hadn't been dating Lisa or whatever. So that really, really was a game changer for us. The pediatrician, I know God used her voice box to communicate that to me. We began a date night, and it's tough when the kids are young to carve out a day, a night, breakfast, lunch, whatever, once every other week or hopefully once a week, where you can date your mate, because what you used to get her is what you used to keep her. So I talk too much about it. I simply want to say,
what do you guys, how do you guys handle it?
How do you guys do that?
Do Ava and Charlie and Roman, do they ever cry if you say,
Yeah.
you've got a sitter tonight, or have you kind of gotten them in that groove?
Yeah, how do you do that? Because all these young couples want to know.
We started that from when they were newborns. We've always taken a moment to, or a night, or whatever, a weekend to get away from the kids. Because I think it's just healthy for us, obviously, but it's also healthy for them.
That's
to
great.
see that mum and dad, we're in the family, the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
We love them and they're our huge priority, but this is our priority.
Yeah. But tell us how you keep control of, or how you keep things from spinning out of control in your relationship with each other and your family unit.
Well, what we started to do was really challenging. We had to change everything from Virginia to New York City. And we have some pretty honest dinners where we'll ask Laura, how am I doing as a husband?
Yeah.
And
wow.
She knows we have the rules where she can't get in trouble for what she answers. Because often spouse people say, be honest with each other.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
A huge fight. I think us just being honest with each other, just making time to say, how do you think I'm doing? And vice versa. And we just keep on reevaluating week by week, almost day by day.
You doing?
Hey, Pastor Ed.
Yes, sir.
I think it's awesome what you're doing.
Thank
and
you.
I'm so behind this.
Amen.
We're going to get behind it at our church. I think God.
We're going to do this experiment.
Oh, yeah. Chelsea,
That's right.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Did you hear that? Chelsea's like stating it right here.
I like
I've
it.
been here for years.
Amen.
7 days in a row. Are you kidding me?
That's
my
right.
groove.
That's right. That's just like, normal. It's normal.
We're doing it. Hey, I think you guys are absolutely amazing, and I think it's incredible. I think if anybody on the planet should have the best sex, it should be people who worship the Creator.
That's right.
That's right.
Dude, I love that. That's right.
Somebody needs to Twitter that.
Sexiest being in the universe.
That's right.
He created it.
Yep.
He is created it for us to enjoy it, and we ought to enjoy it in the right context.
We have to do the best with what God's given us. And it's easy once you get married to relax, isn't it? To say, you know what? I got my man, I got my woman. I'm just gonna put it on autopilot. You know what I'm saying to you? So it's important, without breaking the bank, to look as good as possible. You need to keep yourself fit, etc.
My motto is I don't ever want to be the guy that has to turn off the lights, if you know what I mean.
I think that's good.
That is good.
Wow.
Owen, did you hear that, Owen?
He didn't hear it.
Well, forget it.
Oh,
okay.
that's a good
it's somebody way out there.
Do you remember Owen?
Yeah.
Owen is a legend around here at Fellowship Church. So, but well, that's one of the things that we've been working so hard to get the message out today about the Sexperiment is that, it's way more than about just the physical act of sex. It's about the enjoyment of one another's company. It's about how to date your spouse. It's about how to take care of yourself and be all that God created you to be, but also all that your marriage is to be. And so, it's all about that. And we're really so thankful that there's such great role models like you and Chelsea that, help carry this cause, so to speak.
Now, this is usually when you call in the show and give us your Facebook and Twitters and I answer your questions. Well, tonight, I'm making the phone call. Technically, I'm making a Skype connection. Usually, church talk, like the church lady, and sex talk don't necessarily mix, but one Texas pastor thinks they should, and he's literally shouting that from the rooftop.
We decided to put the bed on top of the church to make a statement that God is pro-sex and he wants us to do it his way.
If there's anything I've learned about fellowship, it is that if you can do something to attract attention, and maybe if it makes some people go, whoa, what is that about?
Right.
That the step one is attract attention, positive attention, even negative attention from skeptics. But once you've got that attention, turn it into a biblical message about intimacy, about sex, something that not a lot of clergy talk about, in order to sort of supplant the messages that come from the secular world.
Exactly. And, you know, Mark, that's what Jesus did. Sometimes we don't think about him in that realm, but he was the most creative communicator in the history of the universe. He was using word pictures, he was using visuals, he was telling stories to capture people's attention. So we're simply taking a page out of his playbook as we put the bed on top of Fellowship Church, because as Lisa said, it's time to bring the bed back in church and God back in the bed, and let's start our own sexual revolution right here, which will lead to, I think, purity, and it will lead to our relational destiny that God has in store for all of us.